Doesn't work. Okay, that's okay. So what people don't understand is, oh, I'm supposed to be on the internet here. Is it? What people don't understand is the fact that there was a time when the Ummahatul Mu'mineen and the Sahabas migrated from Makkah to Medina, and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu or Umar radiallahu anhu was one of the many that complained to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about the condition of their homes, as the women of Medina were of a very different mindset than the women of Makkah, and it was causing a conflict of culture. The women of Makkah were not as the same in that cultural understanding as the women of Medina. The women of Medina were more articulative in what they wanted to do or say, or whatever it was, they would vocalize it. And so what happened was it was in Medina that the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, our mothers, asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for a better life. Not in the sense that they never had a good life, but a life that um, had a bit more comfort. And so we know the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he separated from his wives for many weeks. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Ahzab, verse number 33 is what we're referencing to, is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then, before 33, he speaks to the mothers of the believers and says that if they want the world, come, I will give you the world, right? فَتَعَالَيْنَا أُمَتِّعْكُنَّ وَأُسَرِّحْكُنَّ سَرَاحًا جَمِيلًا. Come, I'll give you all that you want from the world. But if you want Allah and His Rasul and tomorrow, then Allah has prepared something better for you. Ya Nisa and Nabi, O women of the believers, you're not like the other women. If you revere Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching them, He's informing them, He is advising them. Then the 22nd juz of the Quran starts, وَمَن يَقْنُتْ مِنْكُنَّ لِلَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وَتَعْمَلْ صَالِحًا نُؤْتِهَا أَجْرَهَا مَرَّتَيْنِ. If you continue your devotion for Allah and His Rasul, Allah will give you double the reward. And then comes that verse, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَ تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى. To abide within the confinements of your homes and not to beautify yourself as the days of ignorance. Now, what does this mean? It did not mean, because I brought up exactly what we talked about last week, that Aisha radiallahu anha, she was the most eloquent of poets, most knowledgeable in medicine. She was the first faqiha. She was the first faqiha means that she was the first female jurist in Islam. So where did she learn all this? Just sitting at home? No, there was some level of exposure to the society. What this verse means, and some will use this verse and say all women have to stay in their home. One interpretation. Another interpretation is that this verse was meant for the women, for the mothers of the believers, radiallahu anhunna, may Allah be pleased with all of them, and so it doesn't apply to us. And so, what is the right and the correct understanding of this? Because remember, tafsir of Quran is an interpretation or explanation of the Quran. Granted, the Quran was revealed 1400 years ago. Granted that the Quran, majority, if not all of it, was revealed with sabab nuzul, a reason behind its revelation. It didn't just come down for the sake of it. Remember, we believe in two types of revelation. How many revelations are there, sister? Two. Inna anzalnahu fi laylatul qadr. The first revelation is Laylatul Qadr. That means when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the entire Quran on the night of power. That happened all at one time. So when Rasulullah sallallahu got the wahi, that what you call it, Jibreel alayhi salam came and met him, that was the night that entire Quran was revealed. But it was revealed from Lawhi Mahfuz, the secure tablet, to the world, to the Sama ad-Dunya, the sky of the earth. It was revealed there. And then for 23 years, Tanzil. Inzal is the first, Tanzil is a part by part, right? For 23 years. So Allah had already revealed the entire Quran, knowing which circumstances would arise and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would address those circumstances, those situations. And so that was Tanzil. So point being made is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew of what was going to transpire. And I don't know how I got to that point. But nevertheless, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam those commands, and the women acted accordingly. So we know that the tafsir and the sabab nuzul is written in most of the tafsir, but we should always keep an open mind, and I'm going to be very cautious here in how I say this, an open mind of not continuing with one level of interpretation when the Sharia allows in our time and in all times an alternative interpretation. Let me explain this, please. I'm not going to go out and say you could drink alcohol, na'udhu billah. There are certain scholars in this city who are doing that. I'm not even going to name them. Okay? And they say that was restricted to a time. In our Sharia, which is like a boundary, there's a lot of space. So, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ, if some interpreted it at a time to say women should not leave the home, we have seen within that generation or the following generations, the subsequent generations, what the result was of confining a part of Islam to the home. Why? Because Islam is for the men and for the women. Jannah is for men and for women. Learning is incumbent on men and women. So to say women cannot go out at this day and age is actually contradictive to what the Quran was saying. But if you pick up a tafsir from 100 years ago and say, well, that's what the tafsir says, the Quran, what does the Quran say? Now we learned that, and you all remember, we did go through the part where many of the sahabiyat said they learned Qaf wal Quran al-Majid from who? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he used to recite it in prayer. They used to go to prayer and they used to learn it from him. So what is the boundaries of Sharia allowing us? And as I said last week or the week before, that the home is your castle. Everything you do in or outside the home should revolve around the home. So if a woman wants to go get a career, she may do so, so long that career doesn't take her away from her house. So long that career doesn't snatch her talents away from raising her family. See, we have those in our culture say, don't go out. And what happens to your children? They go out, but without boundaries. And then there's those who say, go out with no boundaries. Their children sometimes end up on the opposite side of Islam. Islam set a boundary, and your life revolves around what you do, how you live, and what you leave behind. Remember, what you leave behind is also making your akhirah. What you're sending tomorrow, وَلْتَنْظُرْ نَفْسٌ مَا قَدَّمَتْ لِغَدٍ. Allah is saying, oh believers, fear Allah and look at what you're sending for tomorrow. How could I see that? How can I see what I'm sending for tomorrow? Does anyone have special goggles to see tomorrow? Anyone? Infrared technology, what is it? Allah is saying what you send for tomorrow is what you're leaving behind today. If you're leaving behind a strong family, that's your sadaqah jariyah tomorrow. If you're leaving behind pious children are those who know their parameters, their boundaries set by Allah. They respect it, they accept it, they abide by it. That's called for tomorrow. You leave behind a good home that becomes a sign for other homes. That's a good for tomorrow. You leave behind knowledge and goodness that people continue to learn and transmit it. That's good for tomorrow. What you're leaving today is for tomorrow. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not say that the women should sit in the house, but the house and the home and the family should be the focal point. We have to do away with the single life. The biggest jihad we have today is the single life mentality. Because you're literally killing a generation. You're literally killing, forget a generation, you're killing the rest of humanity. There's going to be no birth. That trend is already gone. First it was get married, have a child, and get divorced. And then it was adopt a child and just take care of a child. And now people don't even want to care about a child. So how is humanity going to continue? And that notion, we have over 7 billion people on this earth and there's not enough resources. Remember one thing, sisters. Remember one thing. Allah is not a fool, na'udhu billah. Allah did not make all of us and say, oh, I can't feed you all. That's a lie. There's a time when you have to hold science and all these so-called bodies and institutions accountable. A report came out how scientists were bought out by the sugar industries to say that sugar was not the problem, fat was the problem. They've lied to us. Scientists have always lied. Don't just take, oh, scientists are telling the truth. They are telling you some truth. Everyone's telling you some truth, but everyone is also lying to you. But you know one who does not tell you any lie? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our world is wasting 40% of the food it produces. Go to some farms, you'll see that the fruits and vegetables grow and rot on its spot. Go to the places where when these companies like what you call it, Dole or any other company, they go and select bananas. If these bananas are out of shape, they know customers look at the shape. They will throw it. So don't tell me the world doesn't have enough food. This was all a hoax to allow people to genetically modify foods and to grow foods like they're growing right now, chicken or meat from the feather of a chicken. It's nasty. Tomorrow we're already discussing lab grown meat. Is it halal or not? Does it fall under meat or not? It's scary. It is very scary. And you're telling me there's not enough milk out there when milk companies are going bankrupt right now? There's enough food out there. Remember one thing. Every food Allah said in the Quran is divine. Allah talks about corn. Corn has been genetically modified. Allah talked about wheat. Wheat has been genetically modified. These two alone are the most destructive forces to your body. They are messing your body up because they're genetically modified. Allah talks about milk. Milk has been genetically modified. Right? They put hormones and everything else inside it, and they over milk the cows. There's so much blood in the milk that they have to kind of bleach it out type of thing. There's so much going on. Allah has made, I could go on a whole tangent right now on this, but Allah has made enough food, air, water for each person that comes on this earth. So don't ever assume that Allah doesn't know what He's doing. In the same way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a purpose of existence. There is no way on the face of this earth that a female or a male can suppress their desires and not procreate or reproduce. It's just a lie. It's all a lie. Allah made us in a certain way. Children are important. Family structure is half of your deen through marriage. We need to go back to that. So وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ, make the home your focal point. Allow your children to grow up and realize that whatever they're doing, their investment, their return, their retirement is their home. If they don't have a home, if we grow up serving creation and bettering creation, how many companies have pulled a sly one on their own employees? There's a lady who's been working for Delta for, how many years was she working? 40 something years. And there's a lawsuit. She was making $250,000 a year, and Delta apparently fired her because she was stealing milk cartons from the plane. And so think about this. Her whole life, she works with Delta, and they fire her. How many companies tell their employees that you have no retirement? How many say you have no more benefits? So you slaved for someone in the name of progress. Remember, what are you making for yourself? Nothing. Nothing. You just help the company. If the company thrives, they'll give you a pat on the back. If the company goes down, the first person they'll chop the head off of is you. Because they don't need you, they need their money. But when you go back home when it's all said and done, there is no home. There is, what's this trend right now? Dogs and cats, right? Everyone have the little chihuahua. I'm taking care of my little chihuahua. The chihuahua is not going to be your investment tomorrow. It's not going to help you tomorrow. You will die alone in your home. If you have to tell your children this, your teenage children, your young adult children, tell them you're going to die alone tomorrow. No one's going to be there for you. Get married, have children, make your home your castle. Your home is your country. Your home is your nation. Your home is your everything. It's the top of the mountain for you. That's what you should be building. Then go out and work within the confinements of Sharia and do not do anything wrong, which is disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And watch how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps you.
What about quality over quantity?
That's a hard discussion because people cannot even define quantity, forget quality. Think about it. How much is enough in our world today? Ask someone, is 10,000 enough? No.
I'm sorry, I meant like children-wise, like didn't the prophet say the quality or?
So remember one thing is, of course, there is one thing that we have to remember is that having one child does not imply quality. Yesterday I was in Costco. This couple was with two children, teenagers, and looked like they were a snobbish upper class couple. All their son was doing was running around to all the free samples and he was taking everything. He was literally picking the whole thing up and walking away with it. Caucasian white people, and he's picking up and running with it, and he's laughing. He's eating some, he's throwing some, and they couldn't say nothing to him. So remember two things in life about marriage. Allah promises this: إِن يَكُونُوا فُقَرَاء يُغْنِهِمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. If a girl and boy are poor, Allah says, get married. I'll make you rich. Who says that? Allah promises that. If they're poor, get married. I will enrich you with my mercy and blessings. So is money a factor of getting married? I think I told you that story. We were in Morocco in the early 90s. Zakaria was our driver and he was in his 50s, and my teacher asked him, rahimahullah, that why don't you get married? And he said, in Morocco, until you don't have a bank balance, until you don't have a home, until you don't have a car, no one's going to give their daughter. What does the Quran say? إِيَكُونُوا فُقَرَاء. And this is a disease in all of us. That is he or she a doctor, professional, graduate? What do they have? This is the first thing we look at.
Just that they also nowadays consider how much student debt a person has.
Wow.
The parents are not willing to take the responsibility of now raising a son and the daughter-in-law and their children. That's
because the focal point is finances, right? And there's an article that Mufti Abdul Nana shared last night that how men are starting to speak out against these lavish weddings because that money could have gone somewhere else. And I'm praying that this lavish wedding trend ends very soon. People are making their money. Each wedding is 50, 60, 80, 100, 200, 300. I've been to a wedding that cost almost $1 million. This is enough. Enough is enough. It has to stop. It has to stop. So you have student debt, yes, but your priorities is a Cinderella wedding. Your priority is a VIP honeymoon. Your priority is a $1 million mansion when you didn't even have a child. What happens? It's already gone downhill. So I haven't answered your question, sister. One is Allah says He'll unite them and He'll give them richness. The second thing the Quran tells us that He gifts children. He gifts. Yahabu. Yahabu liman yasha'u inatha wa yahabu liman yasha'u dhukur aw yuzawwijuhum dhukrana wa inatha wa yaj'alu man yasha'u aqima. Allah gifts girls, boys, both or nothing. It's His gift. So yes, we would say that by eyes, if a person has more children, it would be more costly than having less children. But at the same token, Allah puts barakah, and truly there's barakah. There's barakah in food, there's barakah in clothing, there's barakah in everything in the home. You know why? Because each person born brings their own risk. They don't come dependent on and reliant on your risk. And those who Allah does not give, they can do everything in the world and they will still not get. Why? Because Allah's gifting. And when you go back home countries, they raise big, big families. Everyone's still alive, right? No one in the home died of poverty. Someone may have become a doctor, someone may become a merchant, someone might have been cleaning the streets, but guess what? They're all living, they're fine, they're happy. So the contentment factor in America is so hard to understand. You know why? Because America and the West teaches you, build your dream life and now slave to make it a reality. You have a good credit, right? Go buy a $2 million home, buy a Jaguar, buy this, buy that. Build your dream first because America allows you to have it first, right? In Canada, you have to have 25% down before you buy a house. Not Islamic mortgage, by government. That's why our markets don't crash there. You have to have 25% before you buy a house. So think about this. Over here, 5%, 4%.
Zero.
Zero.
0% when the economy did crash in 2007. Is it zero again?
Well, for certain buyers, yes.
Wow.
For certain buyers, zero down and, yeah.
So look what happens here.
Your interest goes up though, your PMI.
Of course.
Of course.
That's gonna be skyrocketing. So the thing is like, look, you're trustworthy. You're trustworthy. Your credit score is good. Your FICA score numbers are good. Look, this is the house you want, we'll give it to you. This is a car you want, you'll have it. This is a clothing you want, this is lifestyle you want. Now guess what? Wake up 4 o'clock in the morning and slave to pay it off. 20, 30, 40. And guess what? 10 years into it, the wife will say, and it's true, the kitchen's getting old. The husband will say, the garage needs to be more like my man cave. The children will say, we need a soccer court or we need actually a swimming pool. So guess what? You started your life with a $2 million debt, for example, and now every few years, 20,000, 30,000, 10,000, 15,000, it's adding up. The car, after 5 years, that car is old. I promise in 3 years, you're going to be driving that Lexus, you pull up on the traffic light, you look to your right, wow, that's a new addition. Honey, the Lexus is really giving me problems now. I think we need to turn it in for a new one. And when you go to turn it in, they go, no problem, no problem. Guess what? You're paying $625 right now. Just give us $640 a month, you'll get the new one. Oh yeah, it's only $15. This is how they get us American people. Americans are dumb when it comes to finances. I have to say very straight. Finances, they're very intellectually incapable. So what happens is they're going to start you from zero again. All the money you spent is gone. A new lease begins, $15 more, but you're losing more money. And then your insurance will go up. You have to factor so many things in. A person looks at a car, oh, it's $426 a month. Let's buy that. Did you check with your insurance company? Do you know that the color of the car factors into the price of the insurance company? Do you know your record, your history, where you live? It's so many factors. So America, and America's the only one actually, if you think about it. Get the life you want and then slave to make it happen. Allah is saying, live what you have. Yes, if you need a mortgage, you need to get a house, it's understandable. But be realistic. Today, there's stungi in the home because there's like 6 of you and it's really tight. But within 5 to 10 years, one's gone, another's gone, another's gone, and there'll be only 2 of you left. So when you buy the house, put into factor, possibility is only 2 of us or 3 of us will remain in this house for the long run. Now buy that house. Do not be enticed. What the shaitan does, he puts in front of you that carrot. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala show us? وَسِيقَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا إِلَى جَهَنَّمَ زُمُرًا حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءُوهَا فُتِحَتْ أَبْوَابُهَا. The people who are being yanked to hell, they don't even know where they're going. They're being yanked. When they come there, the door will be open. You're right now being yanked with a carrot. You don't even know where the carrot's taking you. وسيق الذين اتقوا ربهم إلى الجنة زمرا حتى إذا جاءوها وفتحت أبوابها. The people who are being escorted to paradise, they're being escorted with honor, and Jannah is already open. So Allah tells you, I will show you what the end is. I'm not going to lie to you, it's a long walk, but let that sight show that it's there. Let that sight be a promise to you, you're almost there. You understand that? Jannah is far, you're walking there, but it's open. The people of Jahannam are being yanked and they don't even know where they're going. By the time they get there and they're tired, guess what it is? It's a fire. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always clear with us. Allah will never lie to us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most truthful. وَمَنْ أَصْدَقُ مِنَ اللَّهِ قِيلًا وَمَنْ أَصْدَقُ مِنَ اللَّهِ حَدِيثًا. Who is more truthful than Allah in His words and statement? No one is. So remember, we do not use the Quran as a manipulation to justify our actions. Rather, we understand it in the context of our time, so long our understanding or explanation of the Quran do not go outside the boundaries of Sharia. And that's why we need to know the boundaries of Sharia, and for that we become scholars so that we know that whatever statement we make stays within the parameters of the Sharia itself. This was a very important topic because we need to change the negative cultures in our society which are leading to our own self-destruction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never lead us to our destruction. It is us in the name of religion that would do that.
Would you go as far as saying the extravagant weddings don't have that much barakah in them?
It's
Because they
proven
show off?
statistically. It's proven. Rasulullah said that, right? The nikahs that have the most barakah, أفضل النكاح barakatan أيسرها مؤونة. The best nikah that has barakah is the one in which the least money is spent. And there are enough reports, if you Google it, it's proven that people who spend the most on their weddings in America, that their divorce rate is higher and they get divorced sooner. Not only is the chances of divorce higher, but it happens sooner. When you have a $40,000 ring to pay off, there's going to be a fight in the house. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a life, my fellow sisters, that if we were to get back onto that life and to openly accept that not all of us, including myself, none of us, are actually on that wholesome path completely, but we're going to make that effort, inshallah, we might get the taunts of the people, but we will get the blessings of Allah. But if you want the blessings of the people, you will still get the taunts of the people, and then you will get deprived from the blessings of Allah. There's not a wedding I've been to, but I've heard complaint. The food was spicy, the food was no good, the food smelled stale, and you spent thousands of dollars. You know what? If your children get married, inshallah, hold a little feast to feed the people, which is a sunnah. 1 dish, 2 dish, right? Keep it 1 or 2 dishes. You don't need 10 dishes. And you know what then? Go to an orphanage somewhere or a food bank somewhere and feed them. What's the purpose of feeding in a marriage? Getting the people's du'as. Back in the days, they used to make ilan in the masjid minaret, or there's someone's nikah or walima. I personally saw that in India. There was an announcement made for someone's walima. Everyone just came and they just fed the people. What was the purpose? If someone ate food, they gave dua to you. It blessed your life. Hindu, Muslim, whoever, just come and eat and bless. Now it's about come, see, and go impressed. And no one's impressed. Everyone's got a complaint. So for what? Your kids will not hate you for this. And if your kids hate you initially, they will thank you eternally for what you did for them. But if we don't stop these trends and we succumb to the culture of society, Allah will not hurt us. Allah will not harm us. Allah will not, na'udhu billah, punish us. You know what Allah will do? Allah will just stay away from us. Take it. I don't want to impose myself. Allah will be. If you don't want me, I'll just leave. That's what it says. If a person is given responsibility and they never ask for the responsibility, Allah will help them in their responsibility. But if a person demands leadership or something, Allah will give it to them and Allah will not assist them in it. Allah's going to walk away. Now you do it. How long will you be able to do right? You're going to mess up someday. And the day you mess up, it's going to cost you more than you could imagine. So we need Allah back in our life, inshallah. So that being said, alhamdulillah, we talked about Aisha radiallahu anha. We talked about her discussion with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about that issue. And we stopped with a beautiful story here. Another of these prominent female scholars was Fatima, the daughter of the author of Tuhfatul Fuqaha, Ala-ad-Din as-Samarqandi. Ala-ad-Din Samarqandi, rahimahullah, died in 539 after Hijri. So he died many, many years after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His daughter, part of what we call those past times. What about her? What should we know about this lady Fatima? May Allah have mercy on her, rahimahullah, because something about her. Let's find out. She was a faqiha, a female jurist. So let me tell you one thing. The one thing that we're finding common from the Sahabiyat, the Ummahatul Mu'mineen, to 500 years later, is that the women knew their Islam. The women knew their Islam. How many of us even ask our son-in-law or daughter-in-laws to be, how much Islam do they really know? Because that's what they're going to inculcate in your grandchildren. I remember I was mediating a divorce in Florida, and the in-laws had the nerve to say, and you know what, Imam? When it was time for the nikah, he couldn't even say the kalima. So why are you telling me now 3 years later? Huh? Because there was some culture or tradition where they make them say the kalima before they do the kabul and stuff. It's maybe some culture of I don't want to say which country. But subhanallah, you never asked that? Do you know your namaz? Do you know your kalima? Do you know halal from haram? Because just say you have a new son-in-law in the home who doesn't know the religion, they're feeding your children haram. Or the daughter-in-law is taking care of the children, she doesn't know the difference between halal and haram, she's bringing pork home and feeding the kids, for God's sakes. Think about this. You don't even know the basics of religion. Yes, okay, they should have a degree. I understand. They should have a job. I understand. But guess what? Money's not everything. I was at the outlet on Sunday. I had to grab something, and in Gap, they're scalping coupons. These are people driving Mercedes and stuff in their IT field, but even our Indian fellows who've come from India have chewed more than they could eat. And they bit more than they can chew. And guess what happened? He's like, the Gap cashback, $25 if you spend 125. Do you want? I have two. I said, sure. I'm not even going to spend. I said, sure, Abe. I'll give it to you for $20. I was like, what is wrong with you? Then we're standing in line, and the guy, this lady comes, and she goes, please, please, purchase my stuff with your Gap card, and I will give you the cash. I'm like, she wants an extra discount. You're driving Lexus and you want $10 more discount? What's going on here? You understand? If the person has money but they don't have Allah, the money will break the home. I promise you. They could be rich as rich. They'll go gambling. They'll go and do bad stuff. And you all can understand. They'll have bad habits. And your daughter or your son will be sitting at home crying their tears of blood. And you'll be saying, mashallah, my son-in-law is so rich and a CEO. And look what your CEO's son is doing. All the people who bragged about the wealth of their families today cry. Or you'll cry. You don't have to brag about these things, because guess what? That person's rizq became that person's jahannam. Ask them, how much Islam do you know? That's what I always tell people. You want to go for Hajj? The first step you make in Hajj is your intention. For example, let's go Hajj this year. It's a 2020. It's a good vacation. Let's go for Hajj. Intention, vacation. Outcome, you're going to complain if it's not a vacation. Let's go for Hajj with a company that gives us good hotels. Intention, pleasure. What's going to happen? It's all going to be on the basis of pleasure. What's your intention? Let's go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because we have no job. Go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll get a job. But you lost most of what Hajj was about. What's your intention? When you ask for someone to give their hand for your daughter or son or whatever the case may be, what's your first intention? What's the first thing that comes to your mouth and in your mind? Do they have Allah in their life should be the first thing. That's all. If they have Allah, your children, your daughter, your son will live a happy life. Have Allah. Remember, not Hafiz or Alim or this, have Allah. That you see from their demeanor that how they make their decisions is with Allah in the equation. They may not have at this moment some external signs. You know, some people say, Are uske, she doesn't have hijab. Okay, she may not have hijab right now. Granted, she may not have hijab. But she may be praying. She may be honest. She may not be two-faced. And then you're saying this one has niqab on, but she has two different lives. Let's be real to ourselves. Stop using symbolism as Islam. Symbols are just symbols. Rednecks have longer beards than I do. Right? The Duck Dynasty's beards are triple the size. Right? Let's not fool ourselves because a beard, a kufi, a hafiz, or alim. Let's say, does this person have Allah in their life? Test them on that. See them and know that insha'Allah, in yakunu fuqara yughnihimullahu min fadli. Remember, hold Allah to His promise. Oh Allah, I'm marrying my daughter off to this person. He has a job, he's fine. But oh Allah, you sustain them because you promised this. Allah promised this. That if they're both poor, Allah didn't say if the husband's poor, if the wife's poor. If they're both poor, put both of them in the same equation. I will enrich them with my fadl. And see that they might live in a jopri, in a hut their whole life. But they'll be so happy. They'll be so content. They'll be so ecstatic. They'll have no health problems. They'll have no stress. They'll have no depression. They're happy. What defines happiness? The size of one's house doesn't define happiness. The quality and name of one's car doesn't define happiness. Believe me, that $400 could save you so much. We as Muslims should know how to save. Americans, according to a survey Bernie Sanders' campaign exposed last election was Americans don't even have $500 in savings. Allah forbid a medical bill. One of my friends in California last night, his friend went for chemo and the bill came from the hospital. He's been in chemo treatment. You know how much the bill was? $616,000. What does that do? Your whole life is gone. You have a house, we'll take your house. You have a car, we'll take your car. Most Americans, even what's his name? This Tesla guy. What's his name? Elon Musk said, "I may be worth a lot, but I don't have cash on hand." He just said it last week, right? I don't have cash on hand. I'm restricted. He's worth 20 billion, but he doesn't have cash on hand. Think about this. If we don't even have $500 saved up for something, if we can't give $100, each one of us should give at least $100 sadaqah every month. At least every month. There should be a way how we channel our money, save our money, make us savings for Hajj, make us savings for a home, make us savings for children's education. Make these savings. Purpose-driven savings. Because there has to be something done. Stop living that, okay, throw it on the credit card and pay it later. Remember, struggle to get it paid before you go is better than the struggle of going and paying it after. Allah wants us to live the right life. It's time to go back to the right life. So financially, we should have some money on our hands.
Do you get rid of the debt first, say student loans, or do you save? So the idea is like you shouldn't be saving.
Well, the thing is that debts as a mortgage or student loan are structured debts. And so you're paying those. When it comes to a student loan, and even Obama talked about mortgages, whatever you pay above the amount goes to your principal. So if your mortgage is $2,000 and you pay $2,300, $300 solid goes to your principals beyond whatever goes from the principal from the $2,000. So if you're paying $500 a month on your student loan, make it $600, and guess what? You're helping paying down faster. But using a student loan debt, which is the highest in America ever, and to use your mortgage as an excuse not to go Hajj, not to go, but we can still go Disneyland, we can still go to Aruba, we can still go to Hawaii, but we can't go to Hajj because you have a debt on you. Let's be real with ourselves. Debt is a structured debt that you're paying. It's like a loan. That's not a problem. But it should not restrict you from fulfilling your religious obligations also. But I think Muslim communities need to come up, and I begged everyone downstairs during our family night that we need to start figuring out how to create an account where children can take some student loans and they pay it back. Imagine if a person becomes a doctor, they took 80,000 from that pool, and now they pay back with dividends. It's gonna continue. People can get money, and you can pay it back faster, and it can help our community. The Jewish community helps the Jewish community with 0% interest, but the Jewish community helps non-Jewish people with a lot of interest. They help their own. All we've done with our money is build houses, apartments, masjids, buildings. All we're doing is building buildings. Imagine having an account that children who reach a certain criteria could tap in for 1 year or 2 years of student loans, and then they pay it back. Yeah, it's going to be a struggle for 10, 15 years. But when that money starts coming back, it's amazing what it'll do. There's an organization called a Continuous Charity. Look them up. They're doing fundraisers to help facilitate funds for children to be educated. Student loans, that's what they're doing. It's amazing. It's a mindset we should have had a long time ago in this country. So moving forward, she is a faqiha. She was a scholar in her own right. She had learned fiqh from her father and memorized his book, At-Tuhfa. Her father married her to his student, Ala-ad-Din Khasani. I think we read this one, right? Yeah. Let's see, this one. No, we wrote the other one that she started teaching him for 1 month, right? Let's see this, which one this is. Who was highly distinguished in the fiqh al-usul, the main issues of Islamic jurisprudence, and al-furu', the sub-issues. He wrote a commentary on Tuhfatul Fuqaha. So the father-in-law wrote the book, he wrote a commentary on the book entitled Al-Bidayah wa-Sinaya, and showed it to his sheikh, who was delighted with it and accepted it as a mahr for his daughter. Look at that. The student writes a commentary on his teacher's book. He gives it to his teacher, and the teacher accepts that as mahar for the daughter, although he had refused other offers of marriage for her from some of the Muslim kings of the Byzantine Empire. The fuqaha of his time said he commentated on his tuhfa and married his daughter. In Arabic, it would be a different saying, like it was a poetry. He commentated on his tuhfa and married his daughter. So this girl could have been married off to a king or whatever else. And there's nothing wrong with marrying a prince or a princess or a king or a queen, whatever the case would have been. The point here is the values were so enriched in the lives of the people before us. Values dictated who would be part of our family, not a dollar amount. So this is exactly another example of how deen thrived, which meant knowledge thrived, which meant that presenting true life to humanity was exemplified. It happened because people were committed and devoted to it. Nowadays, truly, we're just learning Islam for the sake of learning something. This was their blood. This was their veins. This was their flesh. Learning, becoming, bettering, molding. You can't mold the world until you have the knowledge muscles to mold the world. And that's what they did. Before her marriage, Fatima used to issue fatwa along with her father, and the fatwa would be written in her handwriting and that of her father. After she married, the author of Badawi Sanaya, the fatwa would appear in her handwriting and that of her father and her husband. Her husband would make mistakes and she would correct them. A home learning from a home. How many children even learn from their parents nowadays? It's become the hardest thing to do. You know why? Because the culture of our society is let you have the child, let everyone else raise your child. From Kuman and from nurseries and from after school programs, how many children have parents that are knowledgeable? Every parent is knowledgeable in something, but how many of them actually get it from their child? Maryam Ali was actually speaking at the Yaqeen banquet this weekend, and what caught me from her words was, I never really learned a lot from my father, never had much from my father. And that kind of hit me that it's true that many of our children won't take from us. They won't. The world can value her father, but she attested to it, as any human would, being honest, that she really never had. She goes, I'm not inclined to boxing. I don't like boxing. I kind of stopped watching boxing and stuff. Her father was a world-renowned boxer, but to the home, he was just like a man. Okay, boxing may not be your desire or your career path, but you can learn something from your parents. The days are gone that we're learning from parents. The day is gone we're learning from siblings. That knowledge alone can help you excel when you go into the academic field in that same thing, but in a more professional way to get a degree or diploma. You could actually learn something from your parents. Here, a whole family was learning from each other. A student from the father-in-law to become his father-in-law, and then his wife, which was his daughter, the father's daughter. All three of them are doing dynamic work to the extent that she was more than an equal on the table. She was not only writing fatwas, her fatwas were printed in her handwriting, and she would correct her husband if he wrote something wrong. So tell me women are oppressed in Islam. Tell me women have done nothing in Islam. This is 539 years after Hijri. This is 526 years after the Prophet ﷺ's demise. 529 years after the Prophet ﷺ's demise. Tell me that there's something wrong in this picture. What's wrong is in our culture today. What was right is what was happening 529 years later. Aisha, Aisha radiallahu anha, the other wives of the Prophet ﷺ, the daughter of Sayyid ibn Musayyab, Fatima as-Samarqandi, and other famous women scholars were not something unique or rare amongst Muslim women. Now the author is saying here, don't think that the example of Aisha radiallahu anha, the daughter of Sayyid ibn Musayyab, Fatima as-Samarqandi, and all the stories that you just read last 2 weeks are unique. There were innumerable learned women who studied every branch of knowledge and became prominent in many fields. Not only did they study and learn, but they excelled in that field. It wasn't, okay, go get a degree, but then when you get married, sit at home. No, they became and they excelled. They did something in the world. Before they would even so-called retire, they had left behind a footprint that the world would see. Why is it in our traditions today we don't talk about female scholars? We don't talk about male scholars sitting and learning from female scholars. Why is it we don't talk about female coming to the masjid and learning from the Prophet ﷺ? We don't talk about, see, our culture itself is an evidence of the fact that our Islam is messed up. The culture we follow alone is a fact that our Islam is misconstrued. Because this was happening. This was happening because it happened at the time of Rasulullah ﷺ. But here we are fighting if women should come to masjid or if a woman should speak to men. What was happening there? Her fatwas were being spoken to the world. People were coming to learn from Aisha radiallahu anha. Yes, modesty is something that could never be compromised. And Islamic ethics and morals can never be compromised. Islamic traditions can never be compromised. So Aisha radiallahu anha being a faqihah, the first faqihah, remember this, the first faqihah, the first, like the best in poetry, that even the men praised her poetry, the best in medicine that people acknowledge. She never stood up on a minbar and gave fatwa. She never stood up in the minbar and gave a khutbah. She never stood up in the musalla and led prayer. You see how messed up we are, that we say we want to prove that we are not backwards, so women will give khutbah. If Aisha radiallahu anha gave khutbah, I will have the next lady scholar give a khutbah in this masjid this Friday. But they never did it because that was not the way to show off your Islam or to show off your equality. So this is what we become. So pitiful discussions are happening. Oh, a female-led masjid's open. What's your thought? What do you mean you're asking my thought? I don't need to give you my thought. I'll give you my thought of you, but I'm not going to give you a thought of your question. Because they were the best and they didn't have to show it in that way. Our tradition is males have been prophet. Why? Ask Allah that tomorrow. But guess what? Allah never wrote off the women. He said He revealed to Maryam alayhi salam. Allah revealed wahi to the mother of Musa alayhi salam. Allah talks about the best of women in the Quran and the worst of women. ضرب الله مثلا للذين كفروا امرأة نوح وامرأة لوط. The wife of Nuh and Lut alayhi salam were the worst, and the best was Asiya and Maryam alayhi salam, alayhim salam. So Allah not only gave that recognition and identification, but it doesn't mean that our religion is suppressing or oppressing one gender over the other. It was not Allah's sunnah for a woman to be a prophet. Why? Allah will tell you tomorrow. I can't tell you that. And in our Islam, women never stood on a minbar to teach, but they taught. They never stood in a musalla to lead the prayer, but they did lead prayer amongst their own in the house. It happened once or twice during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Happened in the house amongst women. The imama would stand with the women in the same line, and she would lead the prayer for the women. It happened once or twice, just for this fact that we know that it's okay to do. But we wanted to build that men should pray with women. Look what we're fighting about. The day that men and women pray together and a woman leads prayer, we are now advanced Islam. No, we are the most backward Islam in the history of Islam. This was forward Islam. 500 years on, these people were forward Islam. That's why they thrived. That's why they succeeded. That's why they spread around the world. We are still stuck trying to figure things out on our own end.
When she taught, was it through a veil or was it direct?
Aisha radiallahu anha, for most part, she taught with a veil. And all it was a veil between her and the people, but she fully got involved, that they asked her questions, they deliberated, she answered. It wasn't like, yes, listen, okay, thank you, go. No, it was discussions, it was back and forth. And even the Sahabas of that time said, we haven't heard a better faqihah or a poet or something. Aisha radiallahu anha, what did that mean? That she wasn't hiding until Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam departed. She was actively involved. She was actively involved. But remember, that's where the other compromise we're talking about, our values. The values is that a woman will teach. If the modesty is upheld without a veil, so be it. right? It wasn't like they were dressed immoral behind a veil. They were dressed nicely and properly. So if it comes up opportunity for a Muslimah to teach about Islam in a university, she doesn't have to say, well, we need a curtain coming down in front of me, then I'll teach. No. She could teach knowing that she is responsible to uphold modesty. Each person holds himself responsible, everything is possible then. If she holds herself responsible, it's fine. But to say that a lady will have to get up on the minbar in a skirt and give a khutbah in a blouse and that's going to be Islam, give me a break. Seriously, we should even promote these type of people. This is not even Islam. These people don't even know they're Islam. And that's why this book was so important for us to realize the true value system of our Islam, where it's coming from and where we should be taking it, inshallah. So it says here, there were innumerable learned women who studied every branch of knowledge and became prominent in many fields. Ibn Sa'ad devoted a chapter in Tabaqat to report the hadith transmitted by women, in which he mentioned more than 700 women who reported hadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or from the trustworthy narrators amongst the Sahaba. From these women, in turn, many prominent scholars and Imam also narrated hadith. So many of the great Imams, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, all the great scholars that we know the names of, learned from females also. So they're saying now, we want to stop oppression in the homes. We don't want our daughters to be told off or told what to do or to be, na'udhu beat or hurt. First of all, there's no justification for beating or hurting or slandering in any home. There's nothing in Islam for that. But if you want your daughters not to be looked at down, it's not get them a job and give them a career so they could say, I got money and I could walk out. Give them Islam. The person, the husband, will not only value a mother and a wife that is rooted in all sorts of knowledge and upbringing of the home and running the castle, but he will then serve her just as she is serving him. That was the reason that these relationships and their marriages never fell apart. Today, marriages are falling apart if both are educated and one feels the other one's is perpetrating upon them, like they're perpetrating injustices. I'll walk off. I have my own money. Or I can do Islam and you don't want me to do Islam, I'll go become my own Muslimah scholar and do what I have to do. They upheld their family structure and the bond of their marriage was even stronger despite their engagement in society, because their engagement in society was to engage in their homes. Remember, they're building their castle. They were not building their image in the world. So he said, okay, Hafiz ibn Asakir, who died in 571 after Hijri, was one of the most reliable narrators of hadith, who was so trustworthy that he was known as Hafiz al-Ummah. He's known as someone who had memorized everything for the Ummah, counted over 80 women amongst his sheikhs and teachers. How many women did he learn from? 80. Amongst all his teachers, Hafiz ibn Asakir, who's known as Hafiz al-Ummah, learned from 80 female scholars. 80. If we bear in mind that this scholar never left the eastern part of the Islamic world, and never visited Egypt, North Africa, or Andalusia, which were even more crowded with women of knowledge. Think about this. If you know your history, Egypt was founding itself and rooting itself in knowledge. So was the Horn of the northern part of it, not the Horn, the north of Africa, Andalus. Where's Andalus? Spain. And there were more women teaching there. We will see that the number of learned women he never met were far greater than those from whom he did receive knowledge. If he were to travel, he would have learned from at least 200-300 more female scholars. So what was the transaction? Were they walking around with those photo booths on them? I learned from me behind the veil. Was it like a round circle, like a shower curtain that they were pulling back and forth? They were learning. If you're purpose-driven in life, everything goes right. If you're not purpose-driven, even a pious Islamic event will cause fitna. Tell me in an ISNA or ICNA convention, there's never fitna. Tell me. The amount of, na'udhu billah, cases of things that happen there that we hear of, we don't even want to take our families. Alhamdulillah, I've never taken my family to ISNA or ICNA. And I don't plan to ever take them. I've been to one ISNA to speak out in Chicago 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and that was it. I said, I'm not even going. Why? Because if it's not purpose driven, the way they traveled the earth, they traveled Andalus, Africa, Egypt, they're traveling, they're learning, they're transmitting, they're bettering the world. But here, let's go to our Marriott or Hilton. Mom and dad is going somewhere, children are going somewhere else. Now, sometimes mom is going somewhere and dad is going somewhere else. I didn't want to tell you what happens in these places. And it's a culture that you can find if you're looking for it. What was different? There was fitna in that time as much as there was fitna in this time. But you know what was? Their purpose-driven morale, character, and their demeanor prevented them from falling into fitna. They went, they accomplished, they thrived on that knowledge. They thrived in building those societies. Knowledge was transmitted from Baghdad and Basra and everywhere. It was just build, build, build. They weren't learning and sitting there. Imagine a person sitting here and eating. What's going to happen, sister? You're going to die, basically, right? She gave the ultimate. He's going to die. Of course. You're going to eat, you're going to grow, you're going to pop, right? You're going to die. So the thing is that they were learning and they were establishing. If they learned something, established a hospital, established some structure in society. They were so engrossed in building that when they died, the people after them continued their work. This is how they were doing. But we're here sitting and just learning knowledge and just becoming obese in our knowledge. So one of the
Does that include research?
Of course, research was a very important wing of our Islam. Not only did they research the Quranic verses in context to historical happenings, but they also researched from the Quran what the future was. We have the knowledge of the future in front of us. We're the only religion that the prophecies foretell the knowledge of the future. No other religion gives that. The Christians talk about Jesus' return. Here we had the Sons of Abraham meeting last Thursday, and the discussion started over that new movie, The Messiah, that's coming up in Netflix. We started talking about the Antichrist and who is Christ. It was amazing to hear from Christian, Jewish traditions. We had some amazing, I was like, wow. But their mind is about the red heifer, the calf that they're trying to breed here in Alabama and send it to Israel so that that prophecy could be done. The Armageddon war is something that every religion is expecting. Our Quran talks about Armageddon in the Quran, and many people don't even know the verse that it talks about. There's going to be a big war. It's going to be called the Third War, and it's going to happen very soon. Everything in our world is actually telling us what Rasulullah told us, but we cannot see it. Why? Because we don't know it. Imagine you know baking. You could be sitting in the family room and say the cake is done. That's how connected you are with that cake in the oven. Or you could say to your daughter, son, give it 5 more minutes. It's not done yet. You don't have to go test it. Some people are going to say, put that turkey, if you're doing turkey, inject that thermometer, read the temperature, or cake, put a toothpick and take it out. Is it wet or is it dry? People who are experienced don't even have to do that. It's their second sense. It's like their sixth sense. They know it. Islam allows us to understand the past and to predict the course of the future. Not the time of the future, the course of the future. And we are so ignorant at this time. Everything is happening that Rasulullah said is going to happen before the coming of Isa. But we're just sitting around saying, oh, it's nothing. If Allah wants. Imagine 500 years after Rasulullah, they said, if Allah wants. Islam wouldn't have reached where it reached. Islam wouldn't have become what it became if they said, if Allah wants. This is Muslims of today, 1.8 billion Muslims, majority of which are saying, if Allah wants, I'll get hidayah, I'll practice my namaz. My God, it's about namaz? Namaz is a cornerstone of your energy that it gives you to do what you do in your life. Namaz isn't the defining factor. Oh, we want this person to marry our daughter. He prays namaz. I feel sometimes, God like, what is wrong with you? He prays namaz. No, he's establishing a business that is compliant to the laws of Allah. He's helping to mold the world. This is what you want to hear. This is what they were hearing. This guy brings his teacher an elaboration of his book, and he goes, this is the dowry for my daughter. Think about that. Because you took knowledge to the next level. And here we're talking about the pillars of Islam today.
That's like Hassan Minhaj on the Patriot Act. I really like it.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
I have only watched two of his segments, but the way he presents the storyline, he presents his thought in regards to it, he backs it up, and he gives an conclusion. He's got Allah's gifted him with the ability to see a whole picture. And again, it's interesting because what research did for our Muslims, we knew what Baghdad meant to us. We knew what Basra meant to us. But when the last Iraq war happened and Iraq was destroyed, no one, they're talking about Hobby Lobby and them stealing historical artifacts from the museums and shipping them to places on the earth and selling them on the black market. No one talks about all the Islamic research content that's lost, the institutions that are destroyed. That was priceless. You know, to see in Islam, in a city where people were paid to just sit and research a hadith, to sit and dissect it and understand it, and then to sit with people of other religions. Basra was a university for all religions. They all sat together, they all discussed and deliberated, they took the knowledge, and they started making sense of their own religion. Let me finish this one page, inshallah, so we could end on a good topic here. One of the phrases used by scholars in the books of hadith is, and I quote, "the pious, scholar, and trustworthy in the chains of narrations, so and so, the daughter of so and so told me." So many scholars and books that they've compiled has this statement. Again, the pious, scholar, and trustworthy in chains of narrations, so and so, daughter of so and so, told me, end quote. Amongst the names mentioned by Imam Bukhari is Sit al-Wuzara, Wazira bint Muhammad, Ibn Umar ibn al-Asad, Ibn al-Munajji, al-Tunkhariya, and Karima bint Ahmad al-Maruziya. They are all mentioned by Ibn Hajar Asqalani, rahimahumullah, in the introduction to Fathul Bari. Fathul Bari, which explains Imam Bukhari's book, has these names amongst many other names mentioned. The position of these great women is enhanced by the fact that they were silent, they were sincere and truthful, far above any hint of suspicion or doubt, a status that many men could not reach. This was noted by Imam al-Hafiz al-Dhahabi in Mizan al-I'tidal, where he states that he found 4,000 men about whose reports he had doubt. He then follows the observation with the following comment: "I have never known of any woman who was accused of being untrustworthy or whose hadith was rejected." Subhanallah. Many rijal, many men of hadith, there is shak, doubt. When you hear da'if hadith, weak hadith, what does that mean? That the man who is in the chain of narrations, there's something unethical about them. What's the unethical? For example, if I'm narrating hadith in the chain of hadith, when we read hadith, we go through a chain of 4 or 5 people to the Prophet ﷺ before it got to Imam Bukhari, whatever else. In that chain of 3, 4, whatever, how many people, if there was one person who stood up and drank water, and he's a narrator of hadith, and the sunnah says sit down and drink water, because of that action, the hadith that he transmits is questioned. That's da'if hadith. Remember, everyone goes, hadith is da'if, hadith is da'if. Every hadith is a word of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's no such thing as Rasulullah was macho that day, he said the hadith, or he was weak that day. No, every word, if it's not his word, it's called mawdu. Mawdu means gadiwi hadith. It's made up. But if it's a real hadith, where it becomes weak is someone in the chain of narrators had done something which is contradictory to what they're teaching. That's it. As simple as that. Or they yawned without covering their mouth. Or they sneezed and never said Alhamdulillah. Something that people thought they would question. What did he just say? There was over 4,000 men whose reports had doubts. But then he said, I don't know of a single woman who was a teacher, a ustada, a muhadditha, who was ever accused of being untrustworthy. Subhanallah. Every female that was part of the chain of narration was only authentic. And we say our Islam will thrive on the back of men. No, it won't. We need our female sisters again, not just for our Islam, but for our moral character, for our demeanors, for our homes, for our society, and for our world. Today, Islam has created a culture. Look at Saudi now. They just removed yesterday the separation in the restaurants. They used to have a family section, a women's only section. That's also gone now. Every week we're learning something new from that country. Where you suppressed women and now you're saying go do what you want. They have nothing to give to the world. They have nothing to give to the world. So if we are going to say women sit at home, this to me is a great sin. Because what you have done is that you have restricted Islam's growth and stability by cutting if you have 4 arteries by your heart, you've cut 2 of them. The modern Muslim woman, looking at the magnificent heritage of women in Islamic history, is filled with a desire for knowledge, as these prominent women only became famous and renowned throughout history by virtue of their knowledge. Their minds can only be developed and their characters can only grow in wisdom, maturity, and insight through the acquisition of useful, beneficial, and correct knowledge. And as I said, if the mind isn't learning, we talked about this last week, keep learning. If the mind isn't learning, the mind is being indoctrinated. Everything you're listening to, everything that you're watching, it's indoctrinating you. That's why I posted on Facebook for those who follow that the mind can either learn what's right or it could be manipulated, indoctrinated, coerced. It can be, the mind could be played with. Remember, Allah's given us all brains, right? It can be manipulated. But Allah in Islam, through Islam, He taught us about the heart. The heart is something only you can control and Allah can control. Imagine you correct your heart, and that's why Rasulullah said the hadith, in your body is a piece of flesh. If it's good, everything is good. If it's wrong, everything is wrong. Why? Well, he was trying to indirectly tell us, our Islam is working on the heart. Our education system world is working on the brain. Islam is working on the heart. If the heart controls the brain, you will see past all this nonsense. If not, if this is empty and dark, like when we leave this room, we're going to close the light, it becomes dark, then this is what the world is playing with right now. They're all playing with their brains. That's what Allah said, don't rely on your brains, rely on your heart. That's why the fuqaha say, istafti qalbak, ask your heart. Scholars will say the greatest fatwa, mufti, is your heart. Your heart, if it's lit, it's open, it's being used, it will tell you what's right, what's wrong. You don't have to go ask a fatwa for that. If you feel it, you know it. It's despite that, if you want to go against it, you'll go ask a person, give me a fatwa for this. And you might find those fatwas. But the scholars of tradition say, istafti qalbak, ask your heart. So we are in the business of building this. Don't compare Islam to the world. The world has been manipulating heads. It's time to enrich our hearts. So inshallah next week we're going to go through superstitions, and inshallah we're going to go into the soul, and then inshallah we'll pause after next week for our long-awaited winter break. So inshallah we'll see some snow and have some hot chocolate inshallah, but pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive our shortcomings. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pardon us for our mistakes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rectify our path. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take us towards goodness upon goodness and take us away from evil as far as He can. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enrich our homes, the souls in our homes, our masjid, and the souls that come to this masjid, our society and those who reside in this society. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Jazakumullah khair, inshallah. We'll see everyone next week, inshallah. Take care.